Hey, am I seeing things, or is that Captain Marvy? The Captain Marvy? The one who survived being boarded by the Terrans twice? Where? There, sitting with that Chiral with the blue scales. Huh, I think you're right. Oof, you can see the scars from here. Tough individual, to have survived that. Yeah, hardy as a Terran, you could say. Not funny, man. You can't joke about stuff like that. About those monsters. Terrans aren't monsters. Are you kidding me? Look at what they did to him. What they did was war. They just happened to be better at it than most. Stop playing stupid. You know the stories about them, about what they do to Xenos. Yeah, stories spread around by bored crewmen of ships that have never even been in the same quadrant as Terra, let alone seen a Terran for themselves. And you have? In my line of business, you tend to see things and people you otherwise wouldn't. Trade knows no borders, after all. First of all, stop making it so obvious you're a smuggler. I don't feel like spending the next month in Federation custody because of you. Second, are you saying you've actually seen a Terran? From up close? Well, first of all, we're in a dive, below the surface of a mining asteroid, in the rim of the Morgoj system, in the most backwater stellar cluster in the Federation. You can actually smell the crime in the air down here. I don't think our fellow patrons really care about someone breaking an embargo or two. And yes, I have. Ha, wait a moment, I'll go grab us another pair of drinks. I can sense a story coming. A lot of exaggeration coming along with it, but still. Oh, for the love of... This will taste like mining waste. It probably is. Why do we keep drinking it then? It's cheap. Fair enough. So, about that story of yours. About how you've met Terrans. What's the point? You won't believe me anyway. Ah, come on, I'll believe you. Besides, I've already bought this round. You owe me a story. Fine. It was, 15 standard years ago. On Station 00Y77, a little after you left our crew to join up with the Regmal commercial fleet. How did that work out for you, by the way? We'll talk about me later, keep going. Well, you're the one buying drinks. Anyway, as you know, Terra is embargoed by almost every star nation in the galaxy, so when they engage in trade, export specifically, they have to rely on less conventional means. Hold on, Terra exports stuff? Since when? Since forever. Their economy is based on galactic trade as much as any other. The circuits in the Icorian link you're wearing? There's a good chance they were made on Nova Pragua. Now you wanted a story, so let me tell it. Right, sorry. As I was saying, they rely on unorthodox techniques to effectively trade with the rest of the galaxy. They use what they call authorized brokers. Essentially, Terran middlemen who look for enterprising couriers, like myself, to transport goods from Terra through a series of customs in order to muddle up the paperwork and eventually get them to the buyer. I was contacted by such a broker on the 00Y station. There was a Terran on 00Y. No, of course not. He contacted me through Hypernet. Apparently, a Rofian had told him I was up for the task. So one day, I just received a message saying there was cargo waiting for my ship on Dock A81, and a contract waiting for my signature. And you signed up? Just like that? Trust me, if you had seen the cargo, and more importantly the paycheck, you would have done the same. It took up every deck in the Declan to fit all those barrels. Barrels? Tell me you weren't transporting chemical weapons for them. What? No. It was a Terran drink. They called it beer. Beer? Sounds weird. It kind of is at first, but you learn to like it. It's definitely better than this dishwater we're drinking now. What really caught my attention, though, was the Imperial seal at the end of the contract. It read, "The bearer of this seal is hereby under the protection of the Imperium of Terra. By order of Imperator Christopher Schwartz, should any harm come upon them, those who inflicted it shall experience the full wrath of Terra." It sounded like nothing more than fancy words, but then again no other client had promised to inflict their full wrath on anyone who harmed me. So, motivated by the promise of easy credits, the crew loaded up Declan with the beer, and we set off on our voyage. The route the Terran had charted for us went through several flak AR ports. Then we were to unload and reload the cargo in marked Sogol stations that were already bribed by the Terrans to issue us with new official manifests, and finally drop it off at a Thedraki border station. It was a long haul to be sure, around 3 standard years, but no part of the route was heavily patrolled or had a reputation for strict security, so all we expected was a long lazy voyage and a fat paycheck at the end of it. Everything was according to plan and on schedule until we entered the Balaki system just outside of Sogol territory. A Rofian pirate frigate ambushed us about 20 units away from the egress point. Rofians, they're a pain in the neck. Hey, I have Rofian friends, you know. But yeah, you're right, they really are a pain. They hardly gave us any time to react. They were gliding dark and using the faster-moving asteroids as cover. By the time we got visual, it was already too late. They were on board and had their weapons on us before we even knew what was going on. Normally, pirates have the decency to take the cargo and leave your ship alone. In this case, though, no such luck. The cargo was too large for their frigate and too valuable to leave behind. So they chose to do the next logical thing. They herded us all in an escape pod, set our course for the nearest habitable planet, and took off with Declan. My cargo, my paycheck, and my ship. All gone in the snap of an antenna. When we got really unlucky, though, was when we landed on the nearest habitable planet. Machon 4. I don't know if you remember, but at the time Machon 4 was occupied by the Zobelists. I remember, the Holy Order of Zobel was all over the news back then. They were trying to take back their ancestral holy worlds. The way I remember it, they were trying to terrorize the galaxy into handing them over worlds and resources, but I'm not going to discuss politics and religion with you right now. Our pod landed in the middle of a desert, a little to the north of the planet's equator. Sand and dunes as far as the antennas could see in any direction. Being stuck there felt lonelier than being in the middle of interstellar void. And the way the world's atmosphere reflected the light from the star, it gave the sky the same brown hue the desert itself had. During the day, there was no horizon, just a seamless dome of brown. At least at night, the stars were visible. It was always surreal nonetheless. We set up our distress beacon, opened up the emergency rations, and waited. Some of the more optimistic amongst the crew hoped a Lundar ship would come pick us up, since they were the ones at war against the Holy Order at the time and the most likely to be nearby. Personally, I was convinced we'd die on that rock and get buried beneath the endless sand. On our 6th day there, we spotted dust being kicked up in the distance. Some cheered, thinking it was our rescuers, but I knew better. It was the Zobelists, strengthening my conviction that I'd die there. They saw the pod drop and decided to pay us a visit. Tape over the antennas, gags in our mouths, and polymer restraints on our claws. When they took the tape off, we were all locked up in a small room on the 4th floor of what I think used to be a planetscaping station. It was a crappy situation for everyone involved. Even the Zobelists were palpably disappointed when they figured out we were just a bunch of smugglers, and nobody would pay any ransom for us. Still, for whatever reason, they kept us locked in there for another 8 days. On the 9th day, we were woken up by the ground shaking. The Zobelists figured out what it was before we did, because by the time I thought to look to the sky, they were already scrambling to man their air defenses. On the edge of the atmosphere, a faint black silhouette could be seen. It was a destroyer, shaking the surface with grav waves as it dropped out of the jump. At first, I thought it was the Lundar, but I quickly dismissed that notion. For one, the Lundar would never grav jump this close to a planet's surface. For another, what looked like a meteor shower was shooting out of the destroyer. You know, the Terrans have these mythical creatures in their legends. Angels, they call them. They're said to be the ultimate warriors, that they bring about the apocalypse when they descend from the sky, and that they cannot die. When I saw those drop pods hurtling towards us, I realized why those myths existed. The Zobelists' entire AA battery only managed to take down one pod. When the rest landed, I could feel the tremors through the floor. The pods opened up almost instantly, as if the shock of landing and the release of the doors were a single motion. The Terrans came out with these massive ballistic shields and what I thought were projectile rifles. Turned out, the rifles were actually compact railguns. They advanced with perfect coordination and precision, securing each hall and corridor they moved through. It was like watching a hive mind at work. Everyone knew what everyone else was thinking, and they all worked together like it was one mind inhabiting multiple bodies. One by one, they breached each room on their way to us. The Zobelists, outnumbered and outgunned, dropped like flies. Every so often, a grenade would fly into a room ahead of them, and after a flash and a bang, they'd move in to mop up the remaining Zobelists. One of them thought they were being clever and threw a grenade of his own, but one of the Terrans simply picked it up and threw it right back, all in one fluid motion. Then it was our turn. They stormed the room, shouting at us in their language. The one at the front had Jonah written on his chest plate. I'm guessing that was his name. Jonah pointed his weapon at us while the others moved in, checked us for weapons, and cut us loose. A few seconds later, Jonah made a hand gesture, and the others moved out, leaving only Jonah and one other Terran behind. Jonah motioned for us to follow. We went through the building and out into the desert. For all their battle prowess, they were remarkably gentle with us, making sure we didn't trip over anything or strain ourselves too much. A few hours later, we were back on board the destroyer, and within minutes, the Zobelist's compound was nothing more than a smoldering crater. Once we were in orbit, we were led to the medbay, where they treated our wounds and offered us food. Real food, not the synthetic stuff the Zobelists fed us. They even had beer, the same brand I was smuggling. Jonah explained that they had intercepted the distress beacon from the escape pod and identified us as their contractors. He assured us that the Terran government would ensure we were compensated for the lost cargo, and even offered us a new ship, more advanced than the Declan, to continue our work if we so desired. To be honest, I was tempted to take them up on the offer. They had shown us respect and kindness despite the brutal efficiency with which they had dealt with the Zobelists. I couldn't help but feel a grudging admiration for them. In the end, I declined the offer, preferring to stick to more conventional clients. But that experience changed me. I realized that the Terrans, for all their fearsome reputation, were just like us. They had their own lives, their own struggles, and their own way of dealing with the galaxy. And I couldn't help but wonder how much of what we hear about them is just stories, and how much is the truth. Wow, that's quite the story. I told you, you wouldn't believe me. No, I believe you. It's just, I never imagined Terrans could be like that. Neither did I until I saw it with my own eyes. The two companions clinked their glasses and took a long sip, lost in their thoughts about the strange and dangerous galaxy they lived in, and the enigmatic Terrans who inhabited it.